were together in teaching for so many years, maybe more than 40 years together. We were talking to him tonight, and then I have also learned many things from him even yesterday night. And then he said, why not you take a simple lecture which we can record and we can put on YouTube. So with that request, I just my flight is around 10:55, so I considered to his request. And well, if I remember, I'm teaching the undergraduate students after a very long gap. I used to teach postgraduate students very often and very fond of teaching. But usually, because I was a director of Patel Chest Institute, where there was no undergraduate, there were postgraduate courses. I taught undergraduate when I was director Safai. Like your TK Singh, I was also very fond of teaching. So as being a director, I used to take classes of UG there. So maybe after a gap of around 4 or 5 years, I'm teaching to you. With this little bit of introduction, what I'm going to do today with you. As you know, I was told that you are 2015 batch, so you are just in the preclinical side. After a few months, when you clear your first professional, you go to the clinical side. And you will be exposed to such type of things. As you have heard that I am basically a chest physician, so I will be, what I will do with you, that if any patient comes to you with a respiratory disease, and I hope by this time you understand how respiratory disease patients will come to you. You know respiratory system. So respiratory patients, they usually come to us. Their cardinal symptoms are cough, which all of you sometimes in your life you must have. Expectoration means you expectorate sputum. It may be hemoptysis, means blood in the sputum. It may be breathlessness, means when you walk or when you climb, you feel breathless. That is called as breath dyspnea or breathlessness. So these are the cardinal symptoms. If suppose I am sitting in my clinic and I get patient who is complaining of cough, expectoration, breathlessness, hemoptysis, chest pain, I immediately understand, yes, he may be a case of it. He may be a patient who is suffering from respiratory problem. Now, how to approach such type of patient? Rather, how do I approach to such type of patient? To approach a patient, what you do, you take history. Now, for you may not have been exposed to history or exposed to very little. History, I must tell you, is very important. This science is being forgotten in recent years, but let me explain to you 80% of the points which I require to diagnose a patient or to treat a patient comes from history. So you must have understood by now how important history is. So I'll not go into any detail, I'm just introducing, I take the history first. After the history, I came to know, yes, he is suffering from some respiratory disease. Next, what I do? I do physical examination. And physical examination, I always say, consists of 3 things. 1, general examination. General means you see the patient from head to toe, like you see for cyanosis, you see the tongue, you must have heard about cyanosis. You see the tongue, you see the nails for clubbing, so you see the feet, for any swelling. So likewise, there are certain important points in the general examination which talks about many issues as far in terms of diagnosis or in terms of treatment. After the general examination, I said three things in the physical examination. What you do next, you examine all the system. And the first thing in all the system, you first examine the system involved. So from history what I got this patient possibly has respiratory disease. So the second thing I will do, I will examine the respiratory system. What the third thing I am supposed to do, I will examine, as I said, the physical examination consists of general examination and then examination of all the other systems which you might have been told in physiology also there are many systems. But the system involved must be examined first. Means what? You have to spend more time on that system where you are going to get a more findings. And then the last thing in the examination what we do is the examination of the other systems. Like suppose I am examining respiratory first and then all other systems, cardiology, neuro, musculoskeleton, every system is examined hurriedly, and then we, after the physical examination, what we do? We decide about what type of disease patient may be suffering from. What we call it as differential diagnosis. May not be one, maybe we think 3-4 diagnoses, and then we call it differential diagnosis. And to prove out of those 3-4 what we suspected from good history, what we suspected from good physical examination, we investigate the patient. It's not that every patient will be investigated for X-ray, CT, MRI, no. Depending upon the differential diagnosis, depending upon what are the questions in my mind as far as diagnosis is concerned, we will think about investigations. And then we investigate the patient and we diagnose the patient and then we treat the patient. This is how a clinician works. This is just in brief what is in introduction how we work with the patient. Now today what I will do with you, as I said, examination of risk, as I am basically chest physician, examination of respiratory system consists of 4 elements. You must have heard by now in some reference that when we do a physical examination of respiratory system, we do under 4 headings. One is inspection. Number 2 is palpation. Have you heard these words? Yes. So, palpation. Number 3 is percussion. And number 4 is so under you examine any system, forget for a moment the respiratory system, you examine any system, you must have been told there are many systems, and you examine under these 4 heads. So time will not permit me to go for all, but what I am going to talk to you is how the last thing, auscultation, makes us wiser. When we auscultate any patient, how it helps us. And I used to tell every student, suppose in exam you are told, in postgraduate examination in some of the states, one is ultrasound case. What do you mean by ultrasound case? I say auscultate the right infrascapular area. What was the question? Auscultate the right, I hope you understand, right infrascapular area. So, what you are expected to do? So, when you auscultate, and you know auscultation is done with the help of stethoscope. You must have seen. And each and every area is auscultated. First, you know the chest is divided, front, back of the chest, axilla. All the areas are auscultated. And when we auscultate, we have three aims in mind. Number one is, what is breath sound like? Because when you auscultate, the first aim always, as a clinician, will listen what the breath sounds is like to that particular person. And then the second thing, what we try to do in auscultation is there any accompaniment? And the third thing, what we like to do is, what is vocal resonance like? When we will come on vocal resonance, what is it? So I was telling you, in some of the states, there are long cases, there are short cases, and there are ultra short cases. Ultra short cases means examiner is standing, student is standing, and there is a patient. And I put something in this, like I said, auscultate the right infrascapular area. Means the candidate, student, is supposed to answer all these three questions. Then auscultation is complete. Many times we have found, because exam is exam, they are nervous, they just put the stethoscope, listen about the breath sign, and then, because time is limited, and say, sir, I have auscultation. Because by action, I can know whether he has seen all the three essentials which are required to be answered before you can take any decision. So let us start one by one how we clinicians becomes wiser when we get all these three types of findings in the auscultation. First is, as I said, is a breath sounds like. You must have been taught respiratory system and physiology, so you must be aware about respiration. So now there are two types of breath sounds, essentially. We always say. One is vesicular breathing. You have heard vesicular breathing? And another is bronchial. So basically there are two types of breathing. And what is vesicular breathing? What is bronchial breathing? And what is their significance? Vesicular breathing is mainly present over the normal lung. If you auscultate in your own lungs with your stethoscope, whatever sound you listen, that is known as a vesicular breathing if you are normal. Even in the normal individual, you listen over your trachea. So whatever breathing you listen, this is a bronchial breathing. So even you have, since you are not exposed to patient this time, even if you want to listen these breathings, you can have auscultation on your own chest or your own trachea. You may have some idea how vesicular breathing is there and how is the bronchial breathing. Now, first to know the differences between these two types of breathing, as I said, my first aim is to know about the breath sound. So I will auscultate all the areas of chest and I will try to answer the first question. And to answer the first question, we have to concentrate here. As I said, there are basically either vesicular breathing or bronchial. We always say that you differentiate. In practice, I have just told you that how you listen on your own body. You need not to go to any patient, and you can find both types of breathing in your own body. Now, in a basic, there are certain differences by which we recognize that this is a vesicular breathing or bronchial. And those differences are, number one, if I say, the first difference between these two types of breathing is about the duration of the sound. Means when you ask the patient to take breath in means inspiration and take breath out means expiration. When you ask your patient, get it? So those things, what is the duration? If I say this is inspiration is occurring and that is expiration is occurring, and then what we listen? I'll put with another color. We listen in vesicular breathing, whole of the inspiratory phase and 1/3 of expiratory phase. That is, in terms of duration, in vesicular breathing, you listen up to this point. What is the difference in duration in bronchial breathing? Similar way, if you draw inspiratory and expiratory. So what we listen in bronchial breathing is whole of the inspiratory phase except at the end. And then you listen whole of the expiratory. So you find many times when you go to the clinical side, people will talk to you ratio as far as duration of expiratory versus inspiratory phase is concerned. It is 1:3. You understood, I hope? If there is any confusion, please stop me. So here ratio becomes 1:3. Now here in bronchial breathing, this ratio is 1:1. So that's the difference in terms of duration of sound. There are many more differences. I'll just let you know. So this is the first difference. What is the second difference? Second difference is intensity of sound. I hope you understand intensity. Means when we listen, now here in case of vesicular breathing, it is the inspiratory phase or expiratory phase. As far as intensity is concerned, the inspiratory phase is 2 plus. If I put 2 plus, and expiratory phase is 1 plus. So what is important is that here the main, as far as intensity is concerned, it is the inspiratory phase. Expiratory phase is very few. So what you listen is mainly inspiratory in vesicular. What about bronchial breathing in similar term? As far as intensity is concerned. Now here inspiratory phase, if I put like this, is 2 plus, as intense as vesicular breathing, but expiratory phase is 3 plus. So what does it mean? Means here both the phases are intense. But if you talk in relative terms, then it is the expiratory phase which is more intense. So if you understand the difference between vesicular and bronchial breathing as far as intensity is concerned. You understood? So that is the duration, that is the intensity, and third difference is character of sound. Now you ask me, if you ask me, after 4 decades of experience in chest medicine, sir, how do you recognize bronchial breathing or vesicular? Do you think all the differences? I will say no. I'll just listen the character of the sound and what character is described. And in case of vesicular breathing, it is rustling in character. This is what word described is rustling. And in case of bronchial breathing, it is hollow or aspirate in character. Now, if you ask me, sir, what are these characters? It is very difficult to explain. But in your own body, you can practice. You listen the character of the sound over the chest if you are normal. So whatever character is you listen, it is rustling. Means it is a vesicular breathing. And you listen over the trachea. Whatever character of sound you listen, it is a hollow or aspirate. So to find out even the character, difference in characters, you have not to go to the any patient. In your own body, we have learned auscultation like this. By just putting a stethoscope here or here, if you have any doubt, because as I said, how I recognize, how I differentiate between vesicular and bronchial breathing, it is essentially by character of the sound. So out of these 3 what I told, probably character is the most important to differentiate between vesicular and bronchial. And the 4th difference, what is very obvious, I am putting here, 4th difference is obvious, as we find between inspiratory and expiratory is about the gap. There is a no gap and then a gap. So this is 4 differences in our day-to-day clinical practice. We try to answer the first question. So is the breathing vesicular one? Is the breathing bronchial one? Now there are variations. Since we are trying to answer the first question, there are variations of vesicular breathing and there are variations of bronchial breathing. Now if you understand this diagram, the variation in vesicular breathing may be in terms of duration. Everything remains, other remains the same. Like say, if I make this diagram with another color, if you extend this expiratory limb, sound what you listen is like this. It's like this. So what you call it? Vesicular breathing with prolonged expiration. This is a very common type of finding when we clinicians auscultate patients. And it indicates, vesicular breathing, as I said, indicates the normal lungs. Vesicular breathing with prolonged expiration, it is also known as harsh vesicular breathing. Harsh vesicular breathing. So either you say vesicular breathing, as this is explained here, with prolonged expiration, or harsh vesicular breathing is indicative of airway obstruction. Some of you might be present yesterday. There was a World Asthma Day. So 2 of us spoke on the bronchial asthma, and bronchial asthma is one of the common airway obstructive disease. So even simply by auscultation, Simply while you are answering the first question, if I get a harsh vesicular breathing, what it communicates to me? As I said, how the auscultation makes me wiser. When I say wiser means either in terms of diagnosis or in terms of treatment. Here, both the way it is helping me. Diagnosis also, if I listen a harsh vesicular breathing, a vesicular breathing with prolonged expiration, I suspect that there could be airway obstruction. There are only two diseases which have airway obstruction. Essentially there are two. There are many, but essentially there are two. One is asthma and one is COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So by simply auscultating and listening the harsh vesicular breathing, what we have found that there is some element of airway obstruction. This is in terms of diagnosis. And when I decide about the therapy, suppose because of the airway obstruction, he has, what would be the common presentation? He will be either having cough, he may have only cough, he may have no breathlessness. So in both the way, what should be the treatment? Treatment should be according to the diagnosis, and diagnosis is airway obstruction. So if you are going to, would you like to suppress the cough by giving some cough suppressant like linctus codeine, dextromethorphan? Are you trying to give some expectorant which patient can expectorate, or some bronchodilator when his things will be relieved, cough will be relieved? Now listen to me as a clinician that if he has a harsh vesicular breathing, it means it is airway obstruction. It means it is not the cough suppressant. What I have seen in my day-to-day clinical practice, many of us not well trained, they just try to prescribe the cough suppressant. And I know that in such situation, cough is not going to be relieved. So that is the importance of physical examination, what I am trying to say. So that is the first difference here in duration. What is the difference in intensity? Intensity difference-wise, it may be more intense, it may be less intense, a breath sound may be absent. Many times we say that vesicular breath sound less intense. Many times we say vesicular breath is absent breath sound. That speaks that there is some obstruction inside, there is a complete obstruction. That's why the air is entering either less or it is not entering at all. So that is how, this is another difference as far as variety of vesicular breathing is in intensity. So you can have vesicular breathing, you can have harsh vesicular breathing, you can have in more intense vesicular sound, you may have less intense vesicular sound, you may have absent breath sound. So any of things is possible in variation. So basically this is the two variation what you find in the vesicular breathing. Now what are the variation of bronchial? Now bronchial breathing has three types of bronchial breathing. Although the newer books have deleted all these terms because they are hardly found in the western part of the world. So that's why, and most of the books are written by the western people. So they have deleted. If you read Hutchinson, you must have heard the name of Hutchinson Clinical Medicine. If you read Hutchinson of 1940s, 50s, 60s, all these things are written. But if you read the Hutchinson of today, they have deleted. But as a clinician, we still listen to all these sounds and we interpret like this. So what are the variations of bronchial breathing? In bronchial breathing, there are three types of bronchial breathing. One is low pitch, depending upon the pitch, and it is also known as cavernous breathing. Another is high pitch, It is also known as tubular breathing. And third is amphoric breathing. Amphoric. Now, what is low pitched or cavernous breathing means? Pitch will be low. It is very difficult to explain in the words, but pitch will be low. When you listen many patients, then you describe, and it indicates that low pitch or cavernous breathing indicates that there is a cavity. You must have heard about cavity. There is a means inside the lung, it cavitates. So cavity has a wall, and inside that wall, the bronchoscopal markings will be either absent or less. So that we call it as cavity. And if you listen low pitch bronchial breathing or cavernous breathing, we say that we can very confidently say, yes, when you get the X-ray done, there will be cavity. But what is the catch? Not all the cavity will produce bronchial, low pitch bronchial breathing. You require certain things. Cavity should be open, the cavity size should be enough so that it can produce such type of breathing. What happens in examination? The student many times, they know the X-ray and they try to translate into the finding. So they have seen there is a cavity, so they are trying to translate into cavernous breathing, but it's not possible. Once you listen a cavernous breathing, and if you really listen it to be cavernous, there, if you get X-ray done or CT done, there must be a cavity of adequate size. But not all the cavity will produce cavernous breathing. What is the next type of bronchial breathing? Is high pitch or tubular breathing. This indicates consolidation. What is consolidation? Means, you know, lung is consist of alveoli. In the alveoli, the air is filled. When these walls are, space is filled with either fluid or with cells, then lung consolidates. A homogeneous opacity, what you call it pneumonia in simple terms, is our pneumonia. So that if you listen a tubular type of a bronchial breathing, then this is a high pitch variety, and then you call, yes, there must be pneumonia, although it is also supported by history. Patient of pneumonia will have high fever, will have cough, may have breathlessness. Patient with cavity, most common cause of cavity in India is tuberculosis. So patient may have symptoms suggestive of tuberculosis. So all these findings will also be supported from the history also. That then we auscultate and decide. The third variety of bronchial breathing, so this variety has been removed from newer clinical methods, but we still listen in our day-to-day clinical practice. And what is amphoric breathing? Amphoric breathing, once you listen, you will never forget in your life. It's like blowing a whistle over the bottle. You just blow over the bottle, and you, what type of sound you listen, that is known as amphoric breathing. And amphoric breathing is basically a low-pitched type of breathing. It's like a cavernous breathing. But it is associated with high-pitched overtones. That's why I said amphoric breathing is a very special type of a breathing. And whenever you go to the clinical side, whenever you listen amphoric breathing, probably in lifetime you will never forget what is amphoric breathing. And what amphoric breathing suggests, it suggests only two things. Either there is in cavernous breathing, there is a cavity of an optimum size. But in amphoric breathing, first cause is a giant cavity, big cavity. Big cavity of more than 4 centimeters of diameter, known as giant cavity. So by just listening over the chest, we can find out, is there a big cavity? And then we try to translate it to disease-wise. What are the causes of big cavity? And the second cause of amphoric breathing is, you have heard about pneumothorax?
Yes.
What is pneumothorax? Pneumothorax means air into the pleural cavity. So lung ruptures and air comes into the pleural cavity, what we call it as pneumothorax. And pneumothorax may be closed one, means it ruptured and it closed. So it is known as closed one. Another variety, very common variety of pneumothorax is open pneumothorax. Means whatever opening it ruptured and that opening is persistent. It's an open pneumothorax. And the third variety of pneumothorax, usually in clinical medicine, is find tension pneumothorax. Means there is a one-way check valve mechanism. Air go inside the pleura, but it doesn't come out. Tension pneumothorax is a quite emergency process. It means you have to relieve that tension. Otherwise, patient may die. So, when we talking of a amphoric breathing, so first cause I said big cavity. Communicating with the, of course, any cavity will only produce bronchial breathing when it is communicating with the bronchus. And the second cause is open type of a pneumothorax or hydropneumothorax. What is hydropneumothorax? Means air and fluid both. We always tell our students, PG students, when you get air, search for fluid. When you get a fluid in the physical examination, search for the air, because both of the conditions are usually occur together. So, how simple it is. If you listen amphoric breathing, and you can say that yes, amphoric breathing only two causes, either there is a big cavity or there is a open, there is a pneumothorax which is open. By these two methods, you
जैसे कि ये तुम्हारा लिप है ना, इसके ऊपर अगर मैं हवा ब्लो करी,
yes, this is amphoric breathing.
लो पिच है, पर ओवर पिच टोन है, है ना?
Once you listen, you will not forget. So I'm amphoric breathing. To a clinician, I am very clear whether I am going to get a big cavity in the X-ray or going to get a pneumothorax, which is a patent bronchopleural fistula. Means lung has ruptured and it has come into the lung. We call it as patent bronchopleural fistula, BBF. So by the auscultation, so that was the variety of bronchial breathing. There is yet another variety which again the newer books have not described those breathings, but what we listen even today is, I used to say it is in. And what we call it as, here it was vesicular breathing with prolonged exhalation. Don't confuse with this. It is known as bronchovesicular breathing. Now anybody asks, what is bronchovesicular breathing? Very few teachers teach about broncho, but we still listen to them. And so you have heard bronchial breathing, so you implied that either there is a cavity, either there is a consolidation, either there is a large cavity, or there is a pneumothorax or hydropneumothorax with patent bronchopleural. So many of the information they come from auscultation. So what is this? As I have drawn, this is in between. When I say in between, out of these four, what is in between? What I said, how I recognize bronchial breathing? I recognize bronchial breathing mainly by character. So what happens? Many times we auscultate that one phase is hollow or aspirating character like bronchial, and another phase is rustling in character. It means it is combination of both type of breathing, and such type of breathing we call it as bronchovesicular breathing. Now what is the significance of bronchovesicular breathing? You know, when consolidation is complete, as I said, one of the reason for high pitch variety of bronchial breathing is consolidation. When it is complete or it is in process of resolution, resolving pneumonia. In this processes, the one phase may be hollow, another phase may not be hollow. So what suggests a bronchovascular breathing is those causes which suggest bronchial breathing. But then the process is not complete. So you listen, just one phase is hollow in character and another phase is. So one phase is like bronchial and another phase is like vesical. So these are the types of, and you know, whatever types I told you, not that they are written in the books, but we listen in our day-to-day clinical practice. And we can only listen, we can only interpret if you know it. If you don't know, probably it will be there, but you are not going to appreciate that. That's why the knowledge of these things will be very important. So I started with the 3 aims of auscultation, and that was the first aim, about to know about the breath sounds. Any question?
इसमें ये एडिशन कर देते हैं कि अगर किसी ने तेज हवा चलते देखी हो पतझड़ में, तो जो पत्तियों के उड़ने की आवाज है वो रसलिंग है। कपड़ा रसल करते देखे होंगे। और अगर किसी ने बहुत तेज हवा चलते देखी हो घाटियों में सुनी हो, तो जो पतली घाटियों से तेजी से हवा निकलती है उससे जो हॉलो साउंड प्रोड्यूस होती है वो ब्रोंकियल है। और तीसरी बात जो डॉक्टर साहब ने बताई कि ट्यूबुलर इसलिए है कि जो ब्रोंकस लंग के अंदर पास हो रहा है और जो एल्वुलाई खुल रहे हैं या बंद हो रहे हैं, तो वो तो लीफ की रसलिंग की तरह से, और जो ब्रोंकस के थ्रू साउंड पास हो रही है वो हॉलो है, ब्रोंकियल है। तो जब कंसोलिडेशन हो गया, इसका मतलब ये सेल्स हैं या फ्लूइड है बिटवीन द ब्रोंकस एंड द चेस्ट वॉल एंड योर लंग्स, तो ट्यूब की आवाज पास हो रही है, मतलब ब्रोंकियल आवाज पास हो रही है, और ट्यूबुलर ब्रोंकियल ब्रीदिंग। पर जब कोई पार्शियली रिजॉल्व कर गया तो कुछ एल्वेलाई की आवाज आ रही है और कुछ ट्यूबुलर ब्रोंकस की आवाज आ रही है, वो ब्रोंकोवेसिकल है।
I hope you understand this. Now the second aim of our auscultation is there any accompaniments? There are 3 types of accompaniments which we usually listen in respiratory system. One is creps. Second is what you call it as creps. The second is what you listen is bronchi. I'll not go into much detail. And the third is what you listen is pleural thrush. These are the 3 common accompaniments what we listen in our day-to-day clinical practice. What is creps? Creps are intermittent sound. What is bronchi? Bronchi are continuous sound. Creps means suppose there is some fluid into the bronchial tree or into the cavity or into the dilated bronchus. If the air will pass through that fluid, that secretion, there will be an interrupted type of sound, what we call it as crepitation. And crepitations, usually as a clinician, although there are many theoretical details, I'll not go for those. As a clinician, what we recognize, there are 2 types of creps. One is fine creps, and another is coarse creps. Now, if you know the definition of fine creps, your purpose will be solved. What is fine creps? Fine creps means creps present at the end of inspiration. Suppose this is the phase wise, and if cracks present here, this is known as, so cracks only present at the end of inspiration is known as fine cracks. And what it indicates? It indicates that disease, as Dr. Singh was telling, disease at the end of the respiratory system. Means disease may be in interstitium, maybe in alveoli. Means, say, fine crepes are there. It means suppose somebody has started having pneumonia. What will happen in pneumonia? The alveolar sacs, alveoli, they will start collecting either fluid or some cells. So if you ask the patient to take deep breathing, and if you listen cracks, interrupted sound at the end of the inspiration, what we call is as fine cracks. And that indicates any sort of disease at the end of the respiratory system. For example, early stage of pneumonia. If pneumonia will be full developed, then it will be coarse crepitations. Or in the resolving phase, when there will be lot of fluid into the bronchial tree, when pneumonia is resolving, it is coming out, so there could be a course. And coarse crepitation, then how to define coarse crepitation? Coarse crepitation is defined when usually coarse crepitations are present in both the phases. Both the phases. So fine and coarse. Although these terms are now, slowly and slowly they are being obsolete, because now we talk in terms of whether Krebs is inspiratory, means present in inspiration, and which part of the inspiration. This is early inspiratory, this is mid inspiratory, this is a late inspiratory, or this is a pan inspiratory, whole of the inspiration. Likewise, if the Krebs are inspiratory as well as expiratory, when I said that if Krebs are present in both the phases, usually we call it coarse type of crepitation. If the Krebs are present just at the end of the inspiration, what we call it as fine crepitation. And fine crepitations are early. What are the causes of coarse? Suppose I listen coarse crepitation over the chest. How I am going to interpret it as a clinician? Coarse crepitation, I said, there is a bubbling sound, intermittent sound present in both the phases. Either the bronchus, there is some problem in the bronchus, like COPD, chronic bronchitis, you must have heard, there is a lot of secretion in the bronchial tree. Or there is a cavity, and inside the cavity, apart from getting a bronchial breathing, you will find a coarse type of crepitation. So, either there is a bronchial tree disease in terms of chronic bronchitis or COPD, or in terms of cavity, presentation of a cavity, or in terms of, there is another disease, what is known as bronchiectasis. How many of you have heard about this word, bronchiectasis? Yes, very good. What is this? Kya? It's a common disease prevalent in our own country. It may not be prevalent in the Western Hemisphere, but here it is very common. In our day-to-day practice, we see bronchiectasis is how it is defined, is a permanent dilatation of one of the bronchus. You know endobronchial tree? You know if I try simple diagram of endobronchial tree, it starts with trachea, then it divides into the right main bronchus, left main bronchus, right main bronchus divides into, if you identify, you must have let it anatomy, upper lobe bronchus, lobar bronchus divides into three segmental bronchus, and segmental bronchus further divides into subsegment, it keeps undivided. If there is alveolar duct, alveoli, and first this is covered by pleura and this is what makes it. So what I am trying to say, what is bronchiectasis? One of the bronchiectasis is usually present in the lower lobe. So one of the bronchus may be dilated like this, may be dilated like cyst, may be dilated like varicose type. This is like this. So this is the, what is bronchiectasis? Is abnormal permanent dilatation of one of the bronchus, not all. So it's a localized disease. So what we say, if you are listening core script in a localized area, especially in the lower zones, in infrascapular area, because bronchiectasis is mostly localized in the lower lobes. So, I know that kilos and quintals of ATT is misused, anti-TB drugs are misused because people wrongly classify bronchiectasis into the pulmonary tuberculosis because it mimics. And I say to diagnose a bronchiectasis, you require 30 seconds. Take a good history, means cough. If there is a dilated segment, means what? There will be pooling of secretion. If there is a pooling of secretions, there will be chances of recurrent infection. So when there is a recurrent infection in the lower respiratory tract, so patient will have cough. Patient will have large amount of expectoration. There are very few diseases where large amount of expectoration. And in the clinical examination, in auscultation, what you find is coarse crepitations. That too in a localized area, in one lobe. That's why we always say that if you are getting a persistent coarse crepitation in localized area, especially at the bases, with support of good history, you can diagnose bronchiectasis very well.
Especially the right lower area.
So
right bronchus is straighter.
So it may be left, it may be right, but both the way, when we're talking about the site of disease, it is maybe little changed, that bronchiectasis, if it is usually bilateral, if it is unilateral, it is more present on the left lower lobe. Why? What Dr. Nick is saying is little change in that, because if you see the anatomy of trachea and main bronchus, so if I made it very exactly, the trachea is directly leading to the right side. But left main bronchus is, this is the carinal angle, this is much higher on the left side. So what happens? Suppose some secretion goes onto the right side, so aspirations are very common on the right side. Because somebody has aspirated, it will go onto the right side because it is quite in line with the trachea. Because, so theory could be that even the bronchiectasis may also be common on the right side. But why it is more common on the left side if it is unilateral? Because you know secretion, though it goes with lot of difficulty, but once it is there, it is not out.
It is not able to come out.
It is not able to come out. That's why there is a stagnation of secretion, and when there is a stagnation of secretion, chances are that it will be infected, chances are that bronchi will be dilated. That's why it may be both sides, it may be one side, it may be right or left, but if somebody asks you what is more common, aspiration pneumonias and other things are more common on the right side, and bronchiectasis is more common on the left side. So coarse crepitation, another cause is bronchiectasis, which is very common disease in our own country. It is a quite permanent, as I said, there is a permanent dilatation. So either you treat it surgically, you remove that segment of the lung, that part of the lung, otherwise he is going to have symptoms throughout the life. But it's a benign disease, not very complicated. So that's about the Krebs. What is rhonchi? Rhonchi means it is whistling type of sound, and it is produced while air going in and coming out through a partially obstructed bronchus. Means in bronchus there would be airway obstruction, either by inflammation or by edema or by swelling, by any way, the bronchial lumen is reduced. If the bronchial lumen is completely obstructed, there is no question of bronchi. Air entry would be less. You will get diminished air entry on that particular side. But if it is a partial obstruction, air is going in and coming out, but with lot of force. So that's why you listen a whistling type of sound. I think this will be able to make it very clearly. Whistle.
लैपटॉप में कैमरा का
It's a whistling type of sound. Once you listen, you will never forget. Then this is the bronchi. I'm not going to much details, what is sonorous, what is sibilant, but what bronchi indicates? Bronchi indicates very clearly, if I like harsh vesicular breathing, same way the bronchi indicates that there is a partial obstruction in bronchial tree. And disease-wise, we convert into, as I said, either bronchial asthma or there is a COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or chronic bronchitis in simple words people say. Even in bronchiectasis, sometimes when it is associated with airway obstruction, you may get, apart from phlegm, you may get bronchitis. So what I am trying to say, bronchi is because of the partial obstruction. And since this partial obstruction, airway obstructive disease is generalized, it's not localized except in bronchiectasis. So what you'll find, the bronchi would be present all over the chest. Because asthma and COPD both are generalized disease, present all over the lungs, so the finding will be there all over the lung. So in general, bronchi are generalized. But when I am talking of generalized bronchi, so we also talk of a localized bronchi. And what is this? Suppose you auscultate over the chest and you find only bronchi is present in a particular area. What it signifies to clinician? Localized bronchi, and generalized bronchi means generalized obstruction, airway obstruction. So localized bronchi means localized airway obstruction. It could be normal. Suppose one of the bronchus, it is just lodged by a mucus plug, which is very common. And at that point of time, you listen over the chest, you may be hearing a localized bronchi. You ask the patient to cough, the mucus plug will dislodge and bronchi will disappear. So what rule we have made, what rule we tell our students, if there is a localized bronchi which is not persistent, is not important. Even simply a mucus plug may cause for some time a localized bronchi. But localized bronchi, if it is persistent, it's very important. And as I said, it suggests the local type of obstruction. And what do you mean by local type of obstruction? Imagine that there is this obstruction could be because of, here suppose, here is a bronchus, right name bronchus. Suppose there is some lymph node here, paratracheal, parabronchial lymph node, and that is pressing the bronchus. So what happens? There will be partial obstruction. So this pressure may come from outside the bronchus, especially by lymph node. Somebody's lymph node is enlarged by any disease, by TB, by malignancy, then you may get sometimes localized bronchi. It's very important. You can early diagnose. Or else this obstruction may be in the wall of the bronchus. In the wall itself, suppose something is has grown here and has obstructed it partially, so it may produce a localized bronchitis. An example of such type of swelling, say growth within the wall of the bronchus is malignancy, bronchogenic carcinoma, it was the classical example, and then even endobronchial tuberculosis. Sometimes tuberculosis confines to the bronchus, and we call it as endobronchial tuberculosis. So, such a big thing, if you are going to detect only by auscultation, you are a very good clinician. Without doing any X-ray, without doing any CT, without, at least you can suspect, and then you will investigate. And
at this point, let me tell you that more proximal the obstruction, अगर मतलब मेजर ट्रैकिया मॉडल तो जो ब्रोंकाई आएगा वो लोअर फ्रीक्वेंसी का होगा, तो सोनोरस कहते हैं, और इंस्पिरेशन में ज्यादा होगा। जैसे जैसे ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन डिस्टर्ब होता जाता है वैसे वैसे जो ब्रोंकाई है वो जनरलाइज होते जाते हैं, सिबिलेंट होते जाते हैं और एक्सपिरेशन में ज्यादा होते हैं।
Yes, right. So localized, and the obstruction may be within the lumen. What is the example of obstruction within the lumen? Anybody can tell me? As I said, obstruction may be outside the wall just by lymph node, in large lymph node. Obstruction may be in the wall of the bronchus itself, and obstruction may arise from the lumen. What is the classical example? Foreign bodies. Foreign bodies are such. I have seen one of the child who has inhaled the cap of the, what you call it as a CT. उसका जो cap होता है, तो cap means cap of the ophthalmic drops and other drops. That cap he inhaled. And what happens while he inhaled that cap? People were not aware about this inhalation. So the parents came to me and he said, "Sir, there is this whistling sound coming from his chest. Whenever he used to breathe, that air passes through that whistle and there is a sound." So from the history we suspected, has he inhaled something like this, but the child was playing, they were not aware, so not able, but ultimately when we got how you can go inside the bronchial tree, one of the investigation is known as bronchoscopy. Fiber optic bronchoscopy now made very easy. So we have went into the bronchus, looked into the bronchus, we can find that whistle is there in one of the bronchial tree, and we have taken out. I'll get you another example which I usually tell to my students. As Girish knows that I was warden for 25 years of one of the hostels in KGMC. And one of my senior teacher, I'll not name, I'm talking of 90s. A very senior teacher came to my house and said to me, "Rajen, I have all of a sudden feeling some breathlessness. All of a sudden." So I took history in detail. I found there is no asthma-like presentation, nothing like that. When I auscultated him, what I could find that there was a localized grapes on one side. I asked him to cough for 2-3 times, only with the idea that if it is a localized grapes because of the mucus lodging, it may disappear, but it persisted. What lesson I got? Without doing anything, just by listening history, just by auscultation. I thought there could be something into the endobronchial tree. I asked him, "Sir, do you have inhaled something?" He said, No. I slept in the night without any problem, and दरअसल मैं क्लास में हूँ, एक आधे घंटे बाद बात करेंगे. So I could not also understand very clearly in that what is happening. Then I asked him, but I had in my back of mind, it is localized Rankai, I cannot leave professor as such. I have to investigate. Although the history was not forthcoming, but then I got, sir, get X-ray done. And when we got the X-ray done, to our surprise, to his surprise also, there was a tooth-like structure in one of the branches. I said, sir, there is a tooth inside. Why it has gone? Then he opened his mouth and saw, he was a very great professor, he had a gold crown. And that crown slipped in the night without knowledge. What people talk that if you inhale something, it is a very violent process, but I have seen in my career many times patient may not know that really he has inhaled something. Because something going into the trachea is a very painful process. But many times it happens without the knowledge. So then he opened his mouth and he said, "Arey yaar, mera yahan gold ka crown tha, wo kahan chala gaya?" So I said, "Sir, it is inside your bronchial tree. That is causing the breathlessness. That is causing the localized bronchi. So whatever I said to you, always remember in your life, generalized bronchi tells you very, benign disease. Maybe asthma, maybe COPD. But the localized bronchi, if it is persistent, may tell you a very serious disease. And what is the treatment? Treatment is nothing except that you have no short of compromise. You will give some medicine, you will give some bronchodilator, nothing like that. You have to take it out. No other treatment. Otherwise, it is going to complicate in future too much. So we have got it. We asked, we took out that gold crown and his breathlessness has gone. His bronchi has gone. What I am trying to say, what I am trying to explain with these cases, that it is not only written, these signs are only written in books, are written in pages. What you have to experience and what you have to understand, and then you can become a better clinician. That I think every one of you dreams to become a professor and clinician like D.K. Singh, even like me. Everyone has a dream to become. So if you slowly and slowly learn these issues, practice over the patient, listen over the patient, translate into the diseases, try to confirm it, this is the experience. I used to tell, what is the difference between you and me? Let me interact. What is the difference between you and me? Maybe difference maybe in terms of years. How many years? Anybody guess? Between you and me? How many years difference? Guess. Clinician has to guess. मेरी एज नहीं बताता अपना, एक मरीज आई और 70 साल की मुझे लगा कितनी उम्र माता जी, बोले मैं 40 साल की हूँ। मेरा 40 साल की कैसे हो सकती भाई तुम? देखने में तो हाँ साहब मेरे तो बच्चे 40 साल के हैं, तो हमने अपने 40 साल की many times you have to cross question, patient may not tell. So guess what is difference between you and me? How many years? 40 years. You belong to 2015 batch. I belong to 70 batch. कितने साल का हुए? 45. Is it only difference between you and me? Difference between, since I am a clinician, difference between you and me, thousands and thousands of patients. As I have given one example of one of the patients. So this is experience. What I tell, always if I take a first year or secondary classes, in era sometimes I just preach them how you go ahead and how you become a doctor. I said, don't leave the classes. Don't bunk the classes, which has become very common nowadays. I don't know what is here, but most of the institute, what we are hearing, a lot of people bunk the classes. Classes, if you bunk the classes, how you are going to, suppose this class, suppose you have learned 10%. Suppose you have learned one thing. This is more than sufficient. Not that every classes will going to make you much wiser. Some percentage your wiseness will increase. So that is what. So difference between me and you, why I am experienced, not because of only time. Suppose I have done some different work in these 45 years, I may not be clinician. So message is very clear. Don't ignore the patient. Whenever you get an opportunity, talk to them means take history. Examine them means do physical examination. Make diagnosis. Think about diagnosis. Confirm the diagnosis. Treat them. Then you will gain experience. Just by listening, you may not. Just by reading, you may not gain an experience. Now, this was the Rangkai. So, I hope you understand what is Rangkai and what is its significance. And the third accompaniment, what you listen is pleural rub. What is pleural rub means? Both there are two pleura, visceral and parietal. If these pleural layers are inflamed by any disease, it may be infection, it may be malignancy, then they rub against each other because of the inflammation. Usually in the pleural space, there is a small amount of fluid, so they don't rub against each other. But if there is inflamed, then pleura gets thickened and they are rubbing. And that you listen is, the sound you listen that with your stethoscope is the pleural rub. Again, pleural rub will be present in both the phases. Many times people talk of how to differentiate between coarse crepes, which are also there in both the phases, and with the pleural rub, as you understood, it is a rubbing type of a sound. It is a continuous type of a sound. Crepes are intermittent sound. That's one. Second, the pleural rub is usually, as common sense tell you, is the localized. Some part of the pleura will be involved in the disease process. So what history we take? We ask the patient, where is the pain? Because pleural rub in history, it will be translated into pleural type of a very severe pain, which is very severe in nature, which is used to aggravate by any act which may increase intrapleural, which may change intrapleural pressure. So that is pleural rub, that is pleural pain. And how you press your stethoscope over the portion where you are listening the rub, the crepes will not change, but rub will become more pronounced, more intense. So that is how many times, but once, believe me, once you listen even a pleural rub, you will not face any difficulty to recognize it. These terms are looking very great, but once you listen it, once you have practiced it over the patient, you will not face any difficulty. That's the pleural rub, and it indicates pleural inflammation. There is another catch point we usually tell our students. Suppose there is a pleural inflammation means the fluid is going to come into the pleura. So in the initial phases, the pleura will rub when there is no fluid. When fluid occurs, what happens? Pleura will separate. Pain will disappear.
Pain and rub will disappear.
Pain and rub both will disappear.
The disease has aggravated. The physical side is gone.
Has gone. What happened next? What will happen next? That is, many patients do complain to us. When we treat with these patients, we take an out of fluid, we give some antibiotics or anti-TB depending upon the etiology. When fluid gets absorbed, the pleura again come in contact and pain again might appear.
Pain and rub
Rub might appear even after a good treatment.
Patient is getting cured and pain and rub has reappeared.
So if you are a better clinician, if you understand these things, probably you will be able to communicate. Whenever I treat any patients of pleural effusion, pleural rub, I say these words to all my patients. Please don't otherwise feel if you might get pain when disease or when patient comes to me, sir, I have started pain again. And that's a good sign. Get an X-ray done. In X-ray, you find that fluid has absorbed. So those nitpicks of the clinical medicine probably makes us a wiser clinician. That's about, say, accompaniment. What is the third aim of, in post-graduation, many times we see people, if I have said, auscultate, they just do auscultation, sir, I have done it. So I said, I have to look for vocal resonance. No, sir, no. I have forgotten. So whenever I auscultation means, if I auscultate this area means all the three things I have to auscultate. So the third thing is vocal resonance. What is known as vocal resonance? What is vocal resonance? A bit difficult thing. But I will just, there is another term is known as vocal fremitus. They are tactile fremitus. When you ask your patient to speak 1, 2, 3, ask your patient to speak 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We can either feel with your ulnar side of the hand, feel on both sides, and see that these spoken words, there will be some feeling you will be getting. So that's known as vocal fremitus. And if you ask the patient to say 1, 2, 3, and you listen with your stethoscope, whatever you are able to listen, this will be known as vocal resonance. So fremitus and resonance, they are the one. Only just to make fool of you, they have been put in two places. One during the palpation and one is during the auscultation. Otherwise, their significance remains the one. As of now, people many times ask, sir, vocal fremitus is increased, vocal resonance is decreased. It can't happen. It can't happen. Because both are the one. What is vocal resonance? Means somebody is saying 1, 2, 3. So vocal resonance, you listen with your stethoscope, compare it from the other side, and find out what is the intensity of these spoken words. And vocal resonance, so the vocal fremitus may be increased, may be normal, may be decreased, may be absent. All possibilities are there. It's same thing as breath sounds intensity is concerned. So when vocal resonance is increased means abnormal. Diminished means abnormal. Absent means normal means no. So out of these four, only one thing is normal, rest of the abnormal. How to react? Suppose we ask the patient to say 1, 2, 3. Vocal resonance commonly is increased or decreased. Decrease goes with the decreased air entry, like collapse, like consolidation. In consolidation, usually vocal resonance is increased if there is a bronchial breathing. If there is no bronchial breathing, vocal resonance might be decreased, depending upon how the process is evolving. Conduction of sound. So, when it is increased, ideally what we tell, if there is a bronchial breathing, or in that term, bronchovesicular breathing, not vesicular breathing, either bronchial or bronchovesicular breathing, the vocal resonance is increased. Because the conduction is very high.
Sound is being produced by the vocal cords and it is traveling down the trachea and it is finding good medium to go to the chest wall because there is fluid or solid in between the bronchus and the chest wall. That's why it is
And there are different varieties of increase in vocal resonance. One is known as bronchophony. Bronchophony. Another is called as whispering. Whispering means whisper. Pectorality. And third is known as egophony. Egophony. Right? What is bronchophony? Bronchophony, what we describe, suppose patient is saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you are listening these sounds. And it gives you impression that these sounds are being produced at the level of chest piece. You know, in the stethoscope, there is a earpiece and there is chest piece. So it gives you impression somebody is not speaking from this place. If somebody is speaking from this place, it means this is a normal resonance. If it is that somebody is speaking into the chest piece directly, it is increase of bronchophony. What is whispering pectorality? Whispering pectorality is even the whispered words, you may be able to listen that somebody is directly whispering into your ears. It is more intense. And whispering pectorality means ask the patient to say, first you said, speak 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You speak 99, any of these words. And then you find this is a bronchophony is increased. You ask the patient to whisper these words. And these whispered words, it gives you impression with your stethoscope that somebody is directly whispering into your ears. It's very clear, it's very loud. That is known as an increase in vocal resonance, either in terms of broncho or in terms of whispering pectorality. They are associated with bronchial means with cavity, with consolidation. So whenever you listen these sounds, you ask just for vocal resonance. What is egophony? There is another term. In egophony, what happens? There is a nasal tinge is added to these spoken words. आपने 1, 2, 3 बोल रहे एंड उसको नेजल टिंग में कोई आप लोग प्रोड्यूस कर सकते हो, जैसे लगा कोई नाक से बोल रहा. So nasal tinge is added. Once you listen, you will never forget. And egophony usually again is a type of increased vocal resonance, and it is present over the consolidation, sometimes at the level of fluid in pleural effusion, at the top level of fluid in the pleural effusion, you listen what you call it as egophony. So ideally, the third aim what we have got is vocal resonance, and vocal resonance can tell you what is the type of pathology happening into the respiratory system. So what you have seen, and that makes the end of the auscultation. So just if I summarize, I would like to tell you very clearly as a first year student, probably after a year you go to these sites, probably you have got now better information and better knowledge. So one thing I can say, the auscultation is very important for clinician. It's not just you put the stethoscope around the neck and walk around. You listen to it, and you must have observed, you must have noticed that it gives you a lot of information. When clinicians become very wiser in terms of making either diagnosis or in deciding about the treatment of that particular type. So I think
एक चीज सर अगर आपको स्टोनी डलनेस मिल रही है,
अच्छा
और प्लूरल एफ्यूजन है, तो ये है कि खाली फ्लूइड है या एयर,
उसको बता दो.
अगर खाली फ्लूइड है, और आपके स्टूडेंट बता देते खाली फ्लूइड है तो एक्सिला में लेवल ऑफ स्टोनी डलनेस ऊपर होगा और एस टाइप का अगर खाली फ्लूइड है। पर अगर एयर है तो फ्लूइड का लेवल, स्टोनी डलनेस का लेवल हॉरिजॉन्टल होगा। स्टेथोस्कोप आप लगाएंगे और हिला के देखेंगे, अगर आपको सक्शन स्प्लैट फील है, स्प्लैट कैसे पानी स्प्लैट कर रहा है, इसका मतलब एयर भी है, हाइड्रो न्यूमोथोरैक्स एयर भी है, तो उसका ऊपर का फ्लूइड लेवल आपने नीचे चला के देख ली स्टेथोस्कोप लगा के, ये ऑस्कल्टेशन का एक पार्ट है, आपको जैसे पानी स्प्लैट कर रहा हो वैसी साउंड सुनाई पड़ेगी।
That's very good. I mean, GK was a very good student when we were in the junior to me. But you can listen that being an orthopedic surgeon, how clear he is in. Many times just physicians are not clear. And he said, I said in when I was dealing with the open type of pneumothorax, I said, dictate is, if you detect air, search for fluid. If you detect a fluid, search for air. Why? Because these two things usually exist together. And one of the findings, what he talked is, usually I say, since I covered just what I say, this is Dr. Sahab ने एक word use किया, succussion splash. So, when to see it? And rule says that, suppose you find evidence of fluid, and that evidence you make it in percussion. And when percussion or DK6 says very rightly, suppose you get stony dullness at one level. So it means there is a fluid inside. What is the level of stony dullness? What is the type of level of stony dullness that speaks about air and fluid? In simple pleural effusion, when there is no air, the behavior of fluid, suppose you percuss over the front of the chest, percuss in the axilla, this is the axillary line, and then percuss over the back. If there is simply fluid, what will happen? If you percuss here, there is stony dullness, axilla is stony dullness, back stony dullness. So this behavior is like this. Means highest point of dullness goes into the axilla, what is known as Ellis's line. This is how the fluid behaves. So you percuss over the front, percuss over the axilla, percuss over the back, and you may find this. But if there is an air and fluid both, what will happen? This in between, this will come here. So there will be upper border of the stony dullness would be horizontal, will be straight. That indicates air and fluid. And when this indication comes to you on percussion, while you auscultate, take help of 2-3 signs, and these signs what we call it auscultation cum percussion. Means one thing, if there is a straight border, it means that air and fluid, the most pathognomic physical sign for air and fluid is shifting dullness. Means, suppose patient is sitting and you find there is a stony dullness, you find it's a straight border, change the position of the patient. And this is known as immediate shifting dullness. The time you took to change the posture of the patient, in the same time, because of the air and fluid both, what area was dull, it will become red. Means the fluid level has shifted. So that is known as shifting dullness. This is one of the very pathognomic physical sign for hydropneumothorax. Once you have got this sign, then the next sign again, which is again a percussion, cum auscultation, cum palpation, whatever you can say, is the shift, is the succussion splash. And what you do in succussion splash, You just ask your patient that first you ask the patient, I am going to do this because this is a difficult process. So you vigorously shake your chest. Like you put water, half water into your surai and you just shake it. What will you listen? You listen a splashing sound. If the surai is full, you may not listen that sound. But if surai is half, you will listen that sound. Same splashing sound, you will listen with your stethoscope. So while you vigorously move the chest, you first explain to the patient what you are, otherwise you may annoy and he may abuse you, he may slap you, whatever doctor is doing. So you first explain the process. This I am going to do, and splash, and if you get a splashing sound, it means again there is a sort of air. So there is another sign which is again essentially auscultation, but again the help is required. When I was a student, people used to tell me that you require somebody's assistance to demonstrate this physical sign. This is again linked with the hydropneumothorax and pneumothorax, is the point percussion. What do you do with the point percussion? You put one point, suppose you find there is a pneumothorax or hydropneumothorax on the right side. So you put front of the chest one point, percuss with the help of another point. That is why it is sign of percussion, cum auscultation. And then auscultate with your stethoscope over the corresponding area over the time. So this percussion with the point can be done by some assistance, can be done, to my experience, it can be done by the patient himself. Give him 2 points and ask him, just do this, like put it and percuss it, and you listen over the back. Some metallic sound is added to these point sounds, and what we call it as positive point percussion sign. Again, it indicates pneumo-oblique. So I am very happy that Girish remembers these signs way back from 70s onwards, and that's a good sign for a good clinician. So these signs are never wasted. He happens, suppose he become a director. I became a director, but I have to see the patient. Sometimes he also has to see the pleural effusion. He has to, patient will come as a VID for hydropneumothorax. If he examines, patient becomes very happy. You just have percussed, took history, percussed. Sir, you have a fluid in your chest. Good. If you aspirate fluid, he will be the happiest person. Doctor is so great, he just asked for 2-3 minutes and he just percussed once or twice and he said there is a fluid inside and fluid was taken out. I was diagnosed and percuted. So,
without an MRI,
without any say X-ray, without any CT scan, without any MRI, what I am trying to say, it reminds me one more thing. I was asked to deliver a lecture in Mumbai way back in 2010. And in that conference, the theme was, what will happen in 2020? Now we have 4 years ahead. At that time it was 10 years back. And my topic was, will history and physical examination will become obsolete in 2020? Time given to me was around 40 minutes. And I have proven at that time that physical history and physical examination is never going to become obsolete. And I was very true. 2016, even I am teaching you how to take history and how to do physical examination. So what I am trying to say, especially in a poor country like ours, forget about the Western countries who are very affluent, where money is no issue. Our patients, let me say as one of the points, that our patients are good. Only those doctors would be popular. How we became popular? Because those doctors will be popular who can treat your own patients with minimum possible cost. That's why when I teach history, I was just talking to Girish while coming from the guest house, I teach one sentence I would like to tell you also. When I talk about the history taking, I usually say, know the socioeconomic status of your patient. You will know from various things. Even when patient enters, you can know the socioeconomic status, what type of economic he has. So what I say, why you to know? There are many reasons to know the socioeconomic status, and one of the most important reason I tell my students, and I say with these words, peep into the pocket of the individual, means you know his socioeconomic, you know his pocket, not to pickpocket. What unfortunately many of us are doing today. That's why your clinics are broken, you are beaten, sometimes you are sent to the jails. Time has come.
540.
540, the morning news.
540.
Hysterectomies.
Done without reason.
Without reason.
To get 2.5 lakh rupees. 2.5 लाख रुपए का पनिशमेंट हुआ है अक्सर लोगों पे, इसलिए कि उन्होंने हिस्टेक्टमी बेकार कर दी। 20 साल की लड़की में हिस्टेक्टमी कर दी। तो इस तरह के राक्षस बनने से बचने के लिए
So I say that peep into the pocket of the individual, not to pickpocket, but to prescribe accordingly. My dear students, if I am talking you with this much of experience, I must tell you, today if you are treating, either you are investigating or you are treating. Like Girish, if Girish asks me, I can, like I have got 1 hour each, how the inspection, how the palpation, how the auscultation, how the investigation makes you wiser. I have 1 hour each. I can talk to your student when time permits. What I am trying to say that peep into the pocket of, not to pickpocket, but to prescribe. Why? Suppose I have, but because today there are choices. Either in ordering the investigation or in ordering the treatment. I know the antibiotics of 2 rupees per day is available, which can take care of your disease, and antibiotics of 2000 per dose is available, which can take care of your disease. So question is this, suppose a very poor patient has come to you with a lot of hope, and you prescribe 2000, 5000 per day, what will happen? Imagine what will happen, because I have experience in my life. What will happen? He may sell the ornament of his wife. He may sell, rickshaw puller may sell his rickshaw. He may sell his land, many things. We have listening this is pura care बिचवा दी. Because he is symptomatic, he is oppressed with symptoms. Whatever you tell him, he will be abiding to you. Abiding for how many days? Maybe 2 days, 3 days. पैसा उसका खत्म होगा. उसके बाद what will happen? He will leave the medicine. What will be the outcome? Failure. Who will be blamed? Doctor. क्या कहेगा? What patient will tell? I went to Miss so and so. She treated me, and I am not cured. I spent this much of money. I sold my land, I sold my rickshaw, I sold my ornament of my wife. But he will never tell that I have not completed the therapy. Who is at fault? Tell me. Suppose he left because of the poor finances. Who is at fault? Patient? Doctor? Tell me. Doctor. Very clearly. So in your future life, please remember that all the points in the history, like one day I can talk about the history, all the points in the history written, everything has been written after a very long experience. And every point is required to make decisions as far as patient disease. I think with these few words, I once again thank you. Thank Dr. Girish. We are very closely associated for last maybe 40 years. And when I was here, he just requested me why not to, and luckily I was very happy that that I took this class to the MBBS student maybe after 4 or 5 years. But that's, I mean, habit of teaching to a postgraduate student, so that's why I had no problem to teach you. And you know, there has been no, not that I have prepared, not that I have seen my notes, not that I have read from, because why I have no hesitation to teach you, because I practice it daily when I see the patients. Which I practice daily, I need not to read it. I haven't read anything. I was here to take a lecture on Bronchial asthma. All of a sudden, we were discussing, he said, sir, aap ek baar aaj try dijiye. And let us make your recordings and let us put some of it into the YouTube. I said, I agree. And so what I am trying to see, practice makes the man perfect.
करत जड़मत हो सुजान रसरी आमद जात से सिर पर परत।
Thank you very much.
He was 40 years